Myself and other members of the Six Shop have been very fortunate to use a plethora of cameras throughout our filmmaking careers. We've also been extra fortunate to use some of the best cameras in the industry, and especially from the two most coveted companies in the entire filmmaking world. You know the ones. I'm talking about Arri and I'm talking about Red. The team also has a huge belief in that your gear really does matter, but not in the sense that you need it to succeed, but because you, as a filmmaker, have to make a decision of what is going to belong on your set when you're making a film. So although you don't need necessarily a top-of-the-line camera to make an amazing story, it's still going to matter in the end what camera you pick to enhance the story you're telling. So this is the beginning of a little series we're going to do where we talk about the gear that we use and what maybe everyone else uses to make their movies. And we're starting off with the big boy toys first. Don't worry, we'll go down in price soon, all right? Don't lose your minds. Using two of our short films, Recurrence and The Reunion, let's dive into why we used the Red in Recurrence and the Arri Alexa Mini in The Reunion. Let's just go through the objectives of today's learning. What this gear is capable of, the kind of difference in image you get from either camera, and how each camera complemented the storyline of these two different films. So first things first, let's talk about which camera we use per project. Recurrence, we use the Red Gemini 5K, and on The Reunion, we use the Arri Alexa Mini. Don't worry about the lensing too much here because both kind of used a similar set of lenses. For The Reunion, we use Zeiss CP2 cinema lenses with a combo of the Helios 44-2. I'm gonna make a video on that one later. As for Recurrence, we use the Sigma line cinema lenses along with the Helios 44-2 again. So let's start with Recurrence in the Red. Why do we use the Red? Well, first things first before we say the obvious, it was available to us. We did have the option of renting for this, but we chose to stick for the Red for a few reasons. Following our first objective, what can these cameras do? So the Red we were using did two things that was very important to our film. One, the Gemini actually has some extremely good low light capabilities. As you can see in Recurrence, we did a little bit of low light towards the end. It was important we kept all the details possible in that film. What the Gemini also had over the Alexa was that high frame rates were already available to us in that large sensor that Red provided. And there's something about the Red that kind of gives off a really strong contrast with your image. It almost adds this kind of like built-in depth and edginess to all the things, almost like a slick matte finish on a car. It's weird to explain, that's just how I feel about it. Okay, get over it. And we were shooting on a pretty cloudy day. It was snowing out, which looked absolutely friggin' sick. And we really wanted that edgy pop to the whole thing. We weren't out to make some like slice of life movie here. We were really here to make a truly in-depth experience of the mind. That's why we stuck with the Red on a visual premise. The Reunion, we went with the Arri Alexa Mini, knowing that we actually had a Red free to use on this one, but we chose the Arri for probably this biggest reason. You just cannot beat what the Arri Alexa can do when it comes to the organic capture of life. And what do I mean by that? The colors, skin tones, the depth of field, everything on the Arri just feels organic and it captures colors amazingly. And although people always want to talk about dynamic range and how much these cameras can handle in light, where the Arri beats Red every time, and quite frankly every other camera, is dynamic range within color gamut. No matter how extreme your colors are or how wide of a range you're trying to go with your footage, Arri is always going to capture colors true to form. And you cannot beat that flexibility in post. Now the principle, The Reunion was a very human story. It was a very intimate story. It had a lot of shit going on. And we wanted to keep that organicness. We didn't want to push the cinematic feel too much. And that Arri sensor is extremely flattered by natural light. And as you can see by this YouTube video, you can tell I'm a sucker for natural light. I'm a slave to it. As for the functionality of the Arri, we didn't really care for high frame rates. We didn't care for getting those licenses in order to get like 200 frames per second, whatever. We just wanted to stick with that sensor, what it could do. It's not even that great with low light, but the low light scene we had, we used big fat car lights anyway. When it comes down to it, the biggest difference of why we used these cameras on these films is because, one, we owed it to ourselves to give these projects the most detail and depth possible. And we thought that, you know what? I think it's about time we pull the trigger on some big boy toys. Before Recurrence and The Reunion, we were shooting everything on smaller cameras like the Canon C100, the Panasonic GH4 and GH5, sometimes even the Canon Rebel series, which again, that's fine. It's what we had, it's what we wanted to use, and we made it work. But we were just at that point in our filmmaking careers and how long we were down the road that we thought, you know what? It's time to level up, because the stories are leveling up. Now I'm going to play some clips from both films side by side so you can kind of see the comparison of what we've been talking about in this film with both the color contrast, the depth itself, and also just the overall feel you get from these cameras in these two separate films. And now the most important thing I can talk about is, what was it like using these cameras? Honestly, pretty sweet. All right, let's take the glasses off for this one. I won't lie to you, I had a blast using these cameras. It kind of felt like, I guess cathartic's the word. You spend all this time trying to make a film work and you get all these skills of making beautiful cinematic images and directing these awesome frames on cameras that are, quite frankly, at some point, they're beneath your skill. I know that's like the least humble thing I could ever say, but let's be real. You're gonna get to that point where you're using a camera beneath your skill. And to finally have this like big bad gear that's been coveted by Hollywood for decades now was extremely satisfying. It felt like this very unattainable dream was now extremely attainable. And there was no more excuses, really. We had a camera that could do the legwork of what we were doing, and we could throw it at multiple situations and lighting dynamics and just be like, screw it. We can just focus heavily on story now and the framing and overall capture. We don't have to fiddle around as much. We can just get after it and put all our skills at work. I hope that one day that me using an Arri or a Red is just kind of commonplace. I mean, but again, that will be a very fortunate thing for me. Now, the cost of using these cameras was pretty similar. When we rented the Arri, it came as a full kit, and when we got the Red, we got it on loan from a company from our DP, Mike D'Amico. Hey, shout out to Mountain Craft. They're a boutique film group out of West Virginia. Go look them up. They're pretty cool, man. So technically, that one cost us less, but when you look at the rigging of everything, these cameras came out to relatively the same. All in all, though, the cons they're not really worth talking about in this video, because at the end of the day, they're just kind of the growing pains of using new cameras and using these big boy toys. It's gonna happen, but none of the cons that you could ever think of with these cameras are gonna outweigh the actual utility of them on set and the final product. Now, with all of that said, you're probably thinking, Davis, you mother, why are you rubbing in our face that you'd use these upwards to $50,000 to $100,000 camera rigs? Well, it's because I got the firm belief that if you stay true to your passion, you want to keep filmmaking, well, you're not going to be shooting with DSLRs and pocket cams for the rest of your life. You really owe it to yourself to give yourself this knowledge of stuff that is above you. Always learn the gear that is above you while mastering the gear that you currently have. Yes, the best camera in the world is the camera you own, but that doesn't mean you're going to be stuck there. Nobody has dreams of being stagnant. So keep working with the gear you have, keep putting yourself out there, keep making great films, and then one day, big names like Arri and Red, they're going to be closer in your reach than you think. Be sure to keep following us, because we're going to go a little more down in price range for the next video, where we're going to look at more cameras that I use more often, such as, you know, my Blackmagic line, which I guess I'm a bit of a fanboy now. With that said, hope you liked the video. Put a comment down to see if you, I don't know, got any opinions, stuff if you like us or not. You don't have to, but hey, comment anyway. It's good for the algorithm. And be sure to keep following the Six Shop so that maybe one day we can buy you special dog food. That's right. Yes, I'm making you feel bad. Good girl. Okay, go back. This has been Davis on the Six Shop, and I will see you on the next one.